Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, for all you joining us from Ojo al Cielo, we're going to be looking at the idea of mental captivity and how we can break free from that to have like a really fulfilling life.
Yeah, it's interesting how often we focus on, the external battles and struggles that we're facing in the world, when really the most important battlefield is the one that's going on inside our own minds.
Yeah, for sure. And that makes me wonder, like, what does it really mean to be mentally captive? Like, what are these invisible chains that we're talking about that might be holding us back?
Well, think about it this way. Like, imagine that your mind is kind of like this huge unexplored territory. Are you truly free to, wander around and discover all the potential that's in there? Or are there places that you're avoiding or paths that you're too afraid to take because of past experiences or, limiting beliefs? Or just like a fear of the unknown?
Yeah, it's almost like we're building these mental walls around ourselves.
Yeah.
Like a prison that we create for ourselves. And the crazy thing is that breaking free from this mental captivity can be way harder than overcoming some physical limitation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we might spend years trying to heal our bodies or get our finances in order or fix broken relationships. But if we don't deal with the root of the problem, which is our mindset, we're probably just going to end up repeating the same patterns and making the same mistakes and ultimately just feeling trapped.
Yeah, so then how do we even start to break free from this mental captivity? How do we even recognize those chains that we can't even see that might be holding us back?
Well, I think one of the first things is to understand just how powerful our thoughts really are. Like there's this proverb that says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And that really shows the connection between our thoughts and what our reality actually is. Our thoughts aren't just these, fleeting things. They shape how we see things. They affect our actions, and they ultimately determine, the direction that our lives are going to go in.
So if our thoughts are really that powerful, I guess the question then is, are we choosing thoughts that make us stronger? Or are we just kind of by default, going with thoughts that are holding us back?
Yeah, and that's where the whole idea of a renewed mind comes in. It's not just about, learning more stuff or getting more information. It's about changing those patterns in our thinking, challenging the beliefs that hold us back, and getting our minds in line with something bigger.
Wow. Okay, so it sounds like we need a total mental makeover, but where do we even begin?
Think of it like, when you're renovating a house, you're not going to just slap on some new paint without fixing any structural problems or outdated wiring first, right? So in the same way, renewing our minds means looking at the foundation of our beliefs. Like, are there any faulty wires, causing negativity or self-sabotage? And then from there, we can start to rebuild using, stronger, more empowering stuff.
Okay, so we need to identify those beliefs that are holding us back and that faulty wiring, but then how do we actually get rid of them and replace them with something better?
Well, a big part of it is awareness. Just start paying attention to your thoughts throughout the day. What are the common themes that come up? What are the stories that you're telling yourself about who you are and what you're capable of and what you deserve? Once you start to notice those thought patterns that are negative or holding you back, then you can start to challenge them.
So it's like we need to become detectives in our own minds. But what do we do when we actually catch those negative thoughts, red-handed?
That's when the power of choice comes in. You always have the power to choose a different thought. So instead of just accepting that limiting belief as the truth, you got to ask yourself, is this thought actually helping me? Is it moving me closer to my goals and what I want to achieve? And if it's not, then you got to consciously swap it out with a thought that's more empowering.
So it's not about ignoring those negative thoughts or pretending they're not there,
Yeah.
but about seeing them, acknowledging them, and then choosing to go a different way.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming your power, taking control of what's happening in your mind,
Yeah.
and becoming the architect of your own thoughts and beliefs.
But sometimes it feels like those negative thoughts are just so deeply ingrained. It's like they're on autopilot. How do we break free from those patterns that are so deeply rooted?
Well, there's this analogy that I think is really helpful. It's the story about the circus elephant that's tied to a little stake in the ground. When the elephant is a baby, that little stake and a flimsy rope are enough to keep it from going anywhere. But even when that elephant grows up and gets big and strong, it still thinks it's trapped by that same little stake and rope. The stake hasn't changed. It's the elephant's belief about the stake that keeps it stuck.
So it's like we could be holding ourselves back based on experiences from the past or beliefs that aren't even true anymore. We become like that elephant, thinking we're still limited by those old constraints.
Exactly. It's about recognizing those stakes in our own lives.
Yeah.
Those limiting beliefs, the fears from the past, that negative self-talk. and realizing that we now have the strength to break free from all that.
That makes a lot of sense. So we need to become aware of our thoughts, challenge the beliefs that are holding us back, and choose different ones that help us. But there's still that element of the past that's affecting our present. How do we completely break free from that?
And that's where forgiveness comes in. A lot of times we're held captive not just by, our own limiting beliefs, but also by the hurts and resentments that we're carrying around from the past. Unforgiveness is like this heavy chain weighing us down and stopping us from moving forward.
So it's not just about forgiving other people, but also forgiving ourselves for the mistakes that we've made, the choices that might be holding us back.
Absolutely. Forgiveness is like this incredibly powerful act of setting ourselves free. It's freeing for the person who's being forgiven, but it's also freeing for the person who's doing the forgiving. It breaks those chains from the past, and it lets us step into the present moment, with this feeling of freedom and possibility.
This is all so insightful, but I'm still kind of wrestling with this one thing. If our minds are so powerful in shaping our reality, like you're saying, does that mean that we're totally responsible for everything that happens to us? What about the things that are outside of our control?
That's a great question, and it brings us to this idea of how our minds work as filters,
Right.
They shape how we see the world around us. All our past experiences, our culture, and even the information we take, and all those things come together to make this unique lens through which we interpret reality.
So it's like we're all wearing these glasses, but each pair has a slightly different prescription, and that changes how we see everything.
Exactly. And just like glasses can get smudged or scratched, our mental filters can get clouded by negativity or bias or those beliefs that are holding us back. And that distorted view can make us misunderstand situations, make bad choices, and ultimately create a reality that just reflects those messed up views.
Wow. Okay, so how do we clean those lenses?
Yeah.
How do we make sure we're seeing things clearly?
Well, it starts with admitting that our perception isn't always objective reality. We've got to be willing to question what we assume, examine our biases, and look for different points of view so we can get a more balanced and accurate understanding of the world.
It's like we got to step out of that echo chamber that we're in.
Yeah.
And on purpose.
Yeah.
Seek out information and experiences that make us uncomfortable and help us see a bigger picture.
Exactly. By actively challenging those mental filters, we can start to see the world more clearly, make smarter choices, and ultimately create a reality that's in line with our true potential and what we want to achieve.
This is all so powerful. We've covered so much already: the power of our thoughts, the idea of renewed mind breaking free from those limitations from the past, and understanding how these mental filters work.
And we're just getting started.
I can't wait to dig even deeper and explore, what are the actual steps that we can take to unlock the full potential of our minds.
I'm excited to share those with you. But first, let's just take a minute to think about what we've talked about so far. What really stands out to you? What feels the most important?
I think what's hitting me the hardest is this realization that our minds are so much more powerful than we usually think. We actually have the power to choose our thoughts, to challenge what we believe, and to shape our own reality. It's kind of scary and exciting at the same time.
I totally agree. It's a huge responsibility, but it's also an amazing opportunity. By understanding the power of our minds, we can actively participate in creating a life that's truly fulfilling and in line with our highest potential, It's amazing how once you start to see things through that lens of a renewed mind, it changes your whole understanding of faith and what it means to live, with a higher purpose.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. How does having a renewed mind connect to our spiritual beliefs?
Well, a lot of times I think we come to faith with this very limited way of thinking. Like there's only one perfect will of God that we got to figure out. And that kind of thinking can actually make us really scared and stop us from doing anything. We get so afraid of making the wrong choice that we end up not making any choice at all.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling. It's like being stuck in a maze and you're convinced there's only one way out, and the fear of taking a wrong turn just paralyzes you.
Right, exactly. But what if instead of a maze, we picture our lives more like this big garden? With tons of paths and possibilities. What if instead of telling us exactly which way to go, God has actually given us the freedom and the power to explore and discover and create our own path?
That's a beautiful way to think about it. It's like it shifts our focus from being afraid and limited to feeling like there's so much abundance and possibility.
Exactly. It's not about trying to crack some predetermined, rigid plan. It's about trusting that God has given us the wisdom and the intuition and the ability to make good decisions so we can navigate that garden, make choices that match our values, and ultimately create a life that reflects, our unique purpose and our potential.
So it's not about finding the right answers, but about developing the right mindset so we can approach life's journey with faith and courage.
Exactly. It's about developing that renewed mind, a mind that's been transformed by a deeper understanding of God's love and His grace and all the boundless possibilities that He's placed inside of us.
This idea of a renewed mind, it's so powerful. But it also sounds like it's a lifelong journey, like this continuous process of growing and changing.
Absolutely. It's not like flipping a switch, It's about developing those daily habits that feed our minds, challenge those beliefs that hold us back and bring us closer to our spiritual source.
So what kinds of habits are we talking about? What are some things we can start doing today,
Yeah.
to cultivate a renewed mind?
Well, one of the most powerful things is gratitude. When we focus on what we're thankful for, it shifts our perspective from feeling like we don't have enough to feeling like we have plenty. From negativity to positivity. It opens our hearts up to receive more blessings from God. And it helps us to see the good even when things are tough.
So instead of dwelling on what we don't have or what's going wrong, we make an effort to appreciate the good stuff, even small things.
Exactly. And the cool thing about gratitude is that it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. It becomes a habit, a way of seeing the world that leads to more joy, contentment, and peace.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What are some other practices that can help us with this renewed mind stuff?
Another important one is feeding our minds with positive and uplifting things. Just like we feed our bodies with healthy food, we need to feed our minds with information stories and experiences that inspire us, challenge us, and help us understand the world better.
So being mindful of the books, we read the shows, we watch the people we hang out with, it all plays a part in shaping how we think.
Absolutely. The stuff we take in has a huge impact on our thoughts, our beliefs, and ultimately our reality. By choosing to expose ourselves to things that are in line with our values and what we want to achieve, we create this, fertile ground for a renewed mind to grow.
That reminds me of something you mentioned earlier about mental filters and how they affect how we see the world. How does that connect to cultivating a renewed mind?
It's all connected. Our mental filters, those beliefs and biases that are so ingrained in us, can often keep us from seeing the world clearly and from accepting new possibilities. Cultivating a renewed mind means actively challenging those filters, questioning our assumptions, and seeking out different perspectives, so we can get a more accurate and balanced understanding of what's real.
So it's not about just accepting everything we see and hear, but about being critical thinkers, figuring out what's true and always expanding our horizons.
Exactly. It's about developing that discerning mind, the one that can tell truth from lies, fact from opinion, and guide us toward wisdom, understanding, and growth.
Wow, this is all so insightful.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to hear more about what it looks like to actually live with a renewed mind.
Yeah.
How does it show up in our everyday lives?
Yeah.
How does it affect our relationships, our work, our sense of purpose?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of what it means to live a life that's truly in line with our potential. When we develop a renewed mind, it affects every part of us. It changes how we interact with people, how we handle challenges, and how we go after our goals.
So it's not just an internal transformation, but something that, radiates outward and affects how we interact with the world.
Exactly. A renewed mind leads to a renewed life, a life that's filled with more purpose, joy, peace, and a deep sense of connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Can you give us some specific examples of how a renewed mind might show up in our daily lives?
Sure. In our relationships, a renewed mind helps us to be more compassionate, understanding, and forgiving. We become more patient, less judgmental, and more willing to see things from other people's point of view.
So instead of just reacting or getting caught up in arguments, we approach those tough situations with calmness and understanding.
Exactly. We learn to communicate better, resolve conflicts in a healthy way, and build stronger, more fulfilling relationships based on mutual respect and love.
That's incredible. What about in our work or when we're pursuing our passions? How does a renewed mind change our approach there?
In our work, a renewed mind brings more creativity, innovation, and a sense of purpose that goes beyond just getting a paycheck. We face challenges with a focus on finding solutions. We're open to new opportunities, and we strive for excellence in everything we do.
So instead of feeling stuck or uninspired, we find joy and fulfillment in our work, knowing that we're using our unique talents and gifts to make a difference in the world.
Exactly. A renewed mind helps us see our work as more than just a job. It becomes a way to express our creativity to make a positive impact and to live a life that has meaning and purpose.
This is all so inspiring.
Yeah.
It really paints this beautiful picture of what's possible when we develop that renewed mind. But I can't help but wonder, are there any potential pitfalls or challenges that we might run into along the way?
Of course, transforming our minds isn't always easy. It's a process that takes constant effort, commitment. and a willingness to face those parts of ourselves that we might not like.
What do you mean by those parts of ourselves? What are some of the obstacles that we might need to overcome?
One of the biggest ones is resisting change. Our minds like to be comfortable and stick with what's familiar. And even when those familiar patterns aren't helping us anymore, it can be tough to break free.
So even when we understand in our heads how good a renewed mind would be for us, our subconscious might still be holding us back.
Exactly. It's like trying to kick a bad habit. It takes a lot of conscious effort and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones to really change.
What are some other challenges we might come up against?
Another common one is self-doubt. As we start to challenge those limiting beliefs and embrace new possibilities, it's natural to have moments of fear, uncertainty, and even that feeling of like, I'm not good enough.
So those old voices of negativity and self-sabotage might try to come back, telling us we're not capable or worthy of achieving our dreams.
Exactly. And it's so important to recognize those voices for what they are, just leftovers from our old way of thinking. And don't let them stop us from moving forward.
So how do we quiet those negative voices and stay committed to having a renewed mind, even when it gets hard?
One really powerful technique is to surround ourselves with people who support us, people who encourage us, believe in us, and inspire us to keep growing.
So it's about creating that positive and uplifting environment where we feel safe to try new things, to push past our limits, and to celebrate our wins.
Exactly. Having that supportive community can make all the difference in our ability to overcome challenges, stay motivated, and ultimately experience real transformation.
This is all such valuable advice. We've explored this idea of a renewed mind, its connection to our spiritual beliefs, and the real-life impact it has on our relationships, our work, and our overall sense of purpose.
And we've also talked about some of the challenges we might encounter and the importance of building those supportive habits and communities to help us navigate those bumps in the road.
This has been such an enriching and empowering conversation. It feels like we've just scratched the surface of this fascinating topic.
There's always more to discover. But for now, let's just take a moment to reflect on what we've learned. What are the key things that resonate with you? What are you inspired to do to cultivate a renewed mind in your own life?
You know what really sticks with me is this idea that a renewed mind isn't just some abstract concept. It actually affects how we live our lives.
Yeah.
It changes how we are in our relationships, how we approach our work,
Yeah.
and just how we deal with all the ups and downs of life.
Yeah, it's about moving away from just reacting to things and being more intentional, shifting from a mindset of lack to one of abundance and from fear to faith.
And it's not about becoming this perfect, enlightened person, but more about embracing the fact that we're always growing, learning, and changing,
Exactly. It's about realizing that we're all a work in progress, and every day is a chance to become more mindful, more compassionate, and more empowered in how we live.
You talked earlier about how important it is to actually take action. And it's not enough to just think about having a renewed mind. We got to actually put those ideas into practice. So what are some practical steps that we can take to make that happen in our lives?
Well, one of the best ways to turn these concepts into action is to start with small, consistent steps. Don't try to change everything overnight, Just focus on adding 1 or 2 new practices into your daily routine.
So it's about creating habits that we can actually stick with instead of trying to reach some impossible ideal.
Exactly. It's about those small, incremental changes that build up over time and lead to real, lasting transformation.
Can you give us some specific examples of what those small steps might look like? What are some simple things we can start doing today to cultivate a renewed mind?
Sure. One powerful practice is to begin each day with a few minutes of mindfulness. This could be meditation, journaling, or even just taking a few deep breaths and setting an intention for the day.
So instead of jumping right into the craziness of the day, we take a moment to pause, to be still and connect with that inner wisdom.
Exactly. That simple act of starting the day with intention can have a big impact on our mindset and how we handle everything that comes our way.
What are some other practices that can help us bring a renewed mind into our daily lives?
Another good one is to develop a habit of gratitude. You could keep a gratitude journal, tell people you love how much you appreciate them, or just take a moment each day to recognize the good things you have in your life.
So instead of focusing on what's missing, we shift our attention to what we already have and cultivate that sense of abundance and appreciation.
Exactly. And as we practice gratitude, we start to notice more and more things to be thankful for. Creates this positive feedback loop.
This is all so inspiring, but I'm also thinking that there will probably be times when we fall back into our old ways of thinking and acting. So how do we stay motivated and committed to this journey even when it's tough?
You have to remember that setbacks are a normal part of any growth process. The key is to see those setbacks not as failures, but as chances to learn and make adjustments.
So instead of beating ourselves up when we mess up, we should look at those moments as valuable lessons that help us get back on track.
Exactly. It's all about being kind to ourselves and understanding that transformation is a journey, not a destination.
What are some other ways to stay motivated and stick with this path of personal growth?
A really helpful strategy is to surround ourselves with a supportive community, people who inspire us, challenge us, and celebrate our wins with us.
So we're talking about building a network of people who are on a similar journey. People who can encourage us, hold us accountable, and create a sense of shared purpose.
Exactly. Having that support system can make a huge difference in staying focused, overcoming obstacles, and ultimately creating real and lasting change.
Wow, this has been an incredible deep dive into the power of a renewed mind. We've explored the ideas behind it, the practical ways to apply it, and even some of the challenges and strategies for navigating this transformative journey.
We've learned that a renewed mind is more than just a concept. It's a way of life. It's about making conscious choices, developing positive habits, and surrounding ourselves with people who support us, so we can create a reality that reflects our truest potential.
And it's a journey that's open to all of us, regardless of our past experiences, our current situation, or the limitations we think we have.
The power to change our minds and create a more fulfilling life is within each of us. It's just a matter of choosing to take that first step and embrace the adventure.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. This has been such a rich and empowering conversation.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just the beginning. Keep exploring, keep learning, keep growing. Your mind is an amazing and vast landscape just waiting to be discovered.
And for all of you joining us from Ojo al Cielo, don't forget to subscribe, leave your comments, and give this video a like. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this deep dive and how you're putting these principles into practice in your own lives. Until next time, keep those minds open and those hearts inspired.